Hi and welcome back to Buff's Vintage Bikes. In this video I'm going to take you through the restoration of this old Peugeot Classique. Peugeots hold a special place in my heart. It was one of the first bikes I bought with my first paycheck in the early 90s. It was a lovely pearl white Peugeot Report. I later sold the Report and upgraded to a Peugeot Classique. Very similar to this one, just a later model. This particular bike is built with Tango 2 tubing. The later Classiques were all built with Tango 1, generally regarded as a better tubing. Judging by the headset badge on the bike, I'm guessing it to be around a 1982 model. Peugeots were built under license in South Africa by none other than Gotti Hansen and Etienne Somojo, who originally started Hansen Cycles. In the early 70s, they sold half of their business back to Peugeot in France, but they continued to build for the French company at their factory in Germiston, and then later at the factory in Babalegi near Pretoria. Then in 1979, Peugeot sold their franchise to Western Flyer, who had a factory at Timbaza just outside King Williamstown in South Africa. Yet Gotti continued to make their prestige brand. In 1984, Western Flyer took over the Prestige range as well, and Gotti and Etienne moved on and opened Hansen bicycles, while Western Flyer continued producing Peugeots, using mostly Tanguy tubing and Suntour components. It just so happened that I grew up in King Williamstown, and I had an uncle who worked at the Western Flyer factory in Timbaza. It was through him who I later purchased my Peugeot Classique. You've obviously noticed me using names like Report and Classique. So the South African Peugeots were named slightly different to what their French counterparts were. Where I know a lot of the French bikes were using names like the Peugeot PX10 or the PY10. South African Peugeots had their own range of names, and they ranged from Classique, Report, Le Mans, Mirage, Galaxy was their bonded aluminium frames, and then one or two others which just fail me at the moment. So if you happen across one of these Peugeots with an unusual name, somewhere in Europe or elsewhere in the world, you now know where they come from. Proudly South African built. So on to this particular Classique. As I mentioned, it's built out the Tango 2 tubing, which was rather unusual for the Classique range, the later ones all being Tango 1. In Afrikaans we have a saying, mooi van ver, maar ver van mooi, which translated in English means pretty from far away, but not so pretty up close. And this is how this bike appeared in the beginning. Only once I had stripped it down and started studying the frame in a bit of detail, can you see the years of wear on it. A lot of rust creeping in on places, although nothing major, but more than I'd like. I set about cleaning up the rust spots using a nail file, a little bit of sandpaper, basically just cleaning up where I could see all these little spots, and then treating them with a rust converter, which basically converts the rust and changes it into a more black appearance on the frame. Once I had done that, I started to touch it up using modeling paint. The problem with these old Peugeots is they have a champagne type color on their white. It's not a pure white, and the modeling paint is more pure white. So once the touch-up started on it, you could clearly see where all the touch-ups marks were, as the whites conflicted with each other quite badly. It didn't look too bad, but it wasn't quite up to the standard that I'd like out of a finished bike. Initially I had no thoughts of respraying this bike. It appeared quite good when it was fully built up, but the more I started to work on it, the less happy I got with what I was finding, especially on the top tube in the area that I'm currently working on. The more I sanded, the more I could see the rust creep underneath the paint. There was, however, one major problem. We caught up in the middle of a lockdown, like the rest of the world is. And ours is basically a hard lockdown. So it's no travelling for anything other than essential supplies. So all our hardware stores are closed. Getting hold of paint is impossible. And unfortunately I don't have stock on hand. Not in the colour I'd like. I'd ideally like to match it to this blue that's on the frame. So I was basically left with two options. Clean up the frame, as I was busy doing, targeting all the rust spots and then painting on rust converter. Or option 2, flat the frame right down to bare metal, get rid of all those nasty rust spots, give it a kind of rat rod look. Either of the options would be a temporary state till this lockdown is over and I'll have the frame resprayed to match the old colours. The decision in the household was divided. One of my girls said they liked it in the raw state, and the other one just wanted the touch-ups. So I was kind of in two minds as to which way to go, but you can clearly see what my final decision was. It was obviously more work than anticipated, but the one thing I currently have enough of is time. So I was able to take my time, make sure I got to all those little nasty rust spots and got rid of them as best as possible. When I purchased this bike, the gentleman that I bought it from said he had put new bar tape on the bike already. So I didn't actually want to take it off, which is why when I started doing the polishing, I left the stem and bars as a combo unit and just polished it up as it was. I'd normally strip it apart and do each part individually, but these actually look quite good to start with. I'll now keep quiet as I take you through the rest of this build, from cleaning up all the components to final reassembly of the bike. cleaned up these crankset bolts by putting each one into the front of my drilling machine and then just holding a fine Scotch-Brite pad against them. After that I gave them a dash of Autosol. I'm super pleased with how they turned out. These little brake barrel adjusters were a nice surprise. They looked really cruddy, and after putting them on the wheel, the Scotch-Brite wheel, they cleaned up so nicely, and I discovered they're actually brass. Very chuffed with how they turned out. And finally, after a few days hard work, it was time to put it back together again. Have a look at this time lapse and see if you can spot the mistake I made. The first issue I had was when I put the actual BB back in the bike. The BB was longer on the one side compared to the other side, and very often the longer side will go towards the drive side of the bike. And when I stripped it, I never took note of this. So when I put it back together again, I put the longer side on the drive side, and only discovered afterwards, but it's actually the opposite way around. The longer part is opposite. That'll be a small hint. It was round about here where I ran into an unexpected surprise. I put the gear cable in for the rear derailleur, and then when I tried to change gears, the cable wouldn't move at all. Kinda wasn't expecting that. On closer inspection I discovered that from wear and tear it had actually worn a groove into the housing, the front and the back part of the housing. So I needed to make a plan to get a tool in there small enough to be able to round it off without actually damaging the frame as well. Fortunately I managed to find that little Dremel bit and spent some time working very carefully on both sides of that housing to try and get that hole as smooth as possible. And that little bit turned out to be absolutely perfect for the job. So once it was done and I'd coated it, the shifting was smooth again. I noticed the chain's got a bit of chain slap on it as well, probably due to a weak derailleur spring, which explains why in the beginning of the video that chainstay was so pitted. You can see it had knocked all the paint off of it. I'm not too concerned with it at the moment, as I'm going to replace that derailleur with a Suntour derailleur going forward. If you've hung around this far into the video, thank you very much. This video has been a bit longer than my previous videos, and that's basically because I didn't do a part 1 and 2. I tried to fit the entire restoration into one video. As we close up this build, could I just ask that if you enjoyed this video, you press the like button for me. And if you want to see when I release some of my other work, please do me a favor and subscribe to my channel. It'll help out a lot. The paint job on this bike, or the way I decided to clean it up, probably going to be a little bit controversial with the traditionalists. I went for the rat rod type look to it, where I've given it 3 coats of clear coat over the paint after I'd sanded it down to get rid of all the rust spots. I personally quite like the look. It shows the life of the bike. It obviously hasn't had things easy, and to me it kind of highlights the battering that it's taken through the years. I'll probably leave it like this until the rust starts to develop under the clear coat, and then I'll go to the effort of stripping it down and redoing the frame the same as its colors originally. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. It's running a lovely gold race Hurricane saddle, which was common with the Peugeots in South Africa, fitted to most of them. It's got a mismatch of parts on it though. A Shimano Crane GS rear derailleur and a Suntour 7 front derailleur. Another look at that paint cleaned down. Lovely sulky CLB brake levers with a bit of drillium done on them. CLB brakes to match the CLB levers. CLB obviously being a French company. And my absolute favorite are these strong light cranks. Those cranks weren't even stripped down to base. I merely gave them a polish and they've turned out so beautifully. I absolutely love them. So that's another build done on a proudly South African made steel classic, the Peugeot Classique. I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care out there. I'll see you on the next one.